Welcome back to another episode of Life's Ambition Podcast. Today we're joined by someone who took an opportunity and ran with it. He's going to share his input on his career in the service industry. Without further ado, Dennis Bresingham. Dennis, how are we doing today?
I am terrific, Drew. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I cannot complain. The pollen is finally going away, at least for what I think it is. So it's going good right now. I gotta say, Frozen 4 just happened this past weekend. Were you able to watch any of it at all?
I was able to, having a little bit of a hockey background like yourself and your family. I watched a bit of the semifinals and a bit of the finals as well. So kind of neat seeing how that all came together. So that looked like it was a fun time.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I was able to actually go see it in person, and we were sitting next to a San Jose scout, like a Shark scout, and then there was actually a Detroit scout that we think was a little bit away from us because no one else we knew would have a notebook except people with the NHL teams, like jackets. And so we were talking to the San Jose guy, and he was talking about how everyone on North Dakota except one person is getting drafted, and that one person's not getting drafted because they're 17. And it's just crazy to think about the talent pool that comes out of some of these schools.
Yeah, well, that's the place to be if you're looking for for the draft and the upcoming couple of years, with all of the changes, as you know, and in the requirements on junior hockey versus college hockey, there's a lot of crossover. So it's probably even more prominent and popular and necessary for those pro scouts to be scouting the college team, especially the high-level college team, than even 5 or 10 years ago, for sure.
100%. And you think about studs from like Macklin Celebrini right now, who I think he had like the 4th most points in the league, which is absolutely insane. And then you think about some of the other talent pool that comes out of there. I think Devon Tays was a college player at North Dakota, and TJ Oshie and stuff like that. So super cool. And I know you have this hockey background, but I love to kind of explore one of your other backgrounds in the hospitality world. And I'd love to hear kind of how you got into that.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. And it's terrific to be with you and given the opportunity to share kind of my journey and my background with your listeners. So as you just mentioned, I'm in the hospitality sector and industry. And really, just if you don't mind, I'll spend a moment. Hospitality is a pretty broad industry and kind of covers a lot of ground. My background is in the food and beverage part of that for the most part. There's also a couple other areas that kind of cover hospitality. Hospitality could include the hotel areas. There's also an entertainment area to that. We can talk to a little bit of those down the road if you'd like.
Yeah,
but really, hospitality in general, I like to define it as welcoming and creating experiences for guests that are unique to what they kind of have in everyday life. So in the food and beverage area, that looks one way. In the hotel area, it looks another way. In the entertainment area, it looks one way. But one thing they all have in common is really just creating memorable and connecting experiences with their guests. And so in my experience in the food and beverage background, I'll spend a moment just telling you about my initial journey.
Let's do it.
I don't really have a traditional path into the food and beverage industry. Many of the people I work with, many of the leaders I work with, had a food and beverage background, either as a server or a bartender or a bit of a more traditional path. My path was a bit unique, and that I really didn't plan on finding myself as a leader and in the hospitality industry, but did find myself drawn to it once I did get into it. So I went to school studying business and political science. My father's a lawyer, so I always considered kind of that as a career path, and so studied those things as undergraduates at my university, at Illinois State University, and then followed that up with a career totally outside of hospitality, in the construction and engineering world. Was a project manager and had other various roles in the construction and engineering world. And after about 10 or 12 years of that, Drew, I found myself wanting to kind of go back to school and get a master's degree, and
The
saw that
construction
as
world is
somewhat
really
limited.
hard.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was an exciting time for it. I was in the telecom build out timing of that, so there was a lot going on. But I wanted to kind of further kind of grow, and I went back to school to get my MBA. And while I was in school, I found myself a little bored, candidly, because I left the professional setting and went to school full time and was going to school at night. And I had a friend who worked in the hospitality business. He was a director for Darden Brands, which is a massive hospitality food and beverage company. And he asked, he goes, if I had a lot of free time, he goes, "Do you want to help kind of run a restaurant for me?" Kind of had a pause for a minute. Didn't really have any of that background, but I did have some leadership and some organizational skills, and
Yeah.
I'm a fairly quick learner. So I said sure, and really was able to set my hours and my time around my school schedule. And real briefly, just to get right to the point, about 4 months after I got there, the general manager of that restaurant left abruptly. And the same person that brought me in asked me if I wanted to be the GM, the general manager of that particular restaurant. And my answer quickly was, "I don't think so. That's not really the career path I was thinking about." But my wife, Ann, and I talked about it a little bit, and I do feel like oftentimes these opportunities present themselves for a reason. And so I stepped back a bit and rethought that, and went back to my friend, who turned out to be my boss for a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna pursue this, and if you're patient with me and how I learn, I need a lot to learn.
Yeah.
I loved the opportunity, so I stepped away from school, and from there, felt a connection that I haven't felt with, and then any of my other professional endeavors, and just went from there. And once I found myself in that role and kind of growing in that role, I was really focused on learning as much as I can about restaurants, about kitchens, about not only leading them, but also like operating them, and understanding everything involved that kind of rolls into that guest experience. And so that's where I've been finding myself over the last 15 years or so, and kind of growing in my knowledge and my experience and the people I've worked with. So,
Well, I think the hospitality industry is just so interesting because it is very different, I would say, than any other industry. So, I think about how many businesses run through advertising and marketing, and very much like, here's an ad on TV. But I'd say the food and beverage industry is almost ran by word of mouth and people's experiences, like you mentioned at the beginning. Because if they have a bad experience, then they might they have a friend that wants to go. They might be like, "Hey, I didn't have a great experience," and then that loses out on a customer. Would you say that the food and beverage industry is kind of run by word of mouth in a sense?
absolutely, the reputation of the brand and the guest experience is the most important thing, and or certainly one of the most important things in having a successful kind of not only uh, uh, business but a career in hospitality. Certainly, there's room and opportunity for advertising and promoting through, whether it be kind of those traditional media ways of doing that, TV commercials and stuff. Um, I would say currently social media carries much more of a important role across all of the different types of sectors in hospitality. But
Mm.
absolutely, every single connection and experience by a guest, again, whether that be in food and beverage or your hotel experience, or if you go to Six Flags or Disney World, wherever that is, those experiences and how the guests those experiences resonate with the guests mean more than all of the advertising and all the social media promoting that you can put together, because that's what brings guests back. It really does.
Yeah, and how did you find that a lot of your skills at all from the construction world and engineering world transferred over at all to the hospitality sector,
You know,
or was it just a total new learning curve?
well, from an operational standpoint, it was almost entirely a brand new experience with respect to learning what makes restaurants and the hospitality sector work for the guests, and also work financially for investors and owners and partners. One thing I would say that was really, really critical, though, is just that did translate over, that is a little bit more broad and more leadership wise, is it's really important in the construction and engineering areas and in business in general, I would say, to learning how to prioritize and multitask. Those two skills, just and learning them, and often you really do have to learn them, are kind of translate into hospitality in a way that that I was a little surprised with. In hospitality, there's a lot of moving pieces, especially
Oh,
food
for
and
sure.
beverage, and all of those moving pieces are competing for time and other resources. And being able to prioritize and multitask that is definitely something that carried over and probably helped me a lot more initially than somebody who was brand new to the industry, because I was able to kind of quickly figure out, okay, all of these are important, but these are have to do's. These are nice to do's, and these are
Yeah.
we'll get to. We'll get to, and that really was one important skill that did translate over. And that's a great question, because I think those two things really are critical in almost any business or professional endeavor. But I found that was super useful in kind of my initial journey in learning about food and beverage and restaurants.
Well, I really want to hit on that idea of like multitasking, is because not a lot of people for sure know what happens behind the scenes at a restaurant. People just have their experience like, oh, I get my food. Someone might just take my plate, and then maybe there's another course. Is there dinner? All this stuff. But I got to work as a busboy in high school, and probably one of the most unique experiences I've had in terms of how to balance everything that's going on, because it's like little tasks where it's making sure everyone's glass is filled up with water right away, but you're also having to balance out, oh, this plate is empty, I got to clear this table and set it up again for a new group to come in. And then in the back, you're making bread or doing whatever to make sure everyone has it. And I worked at an Italian restaurant, that's why I said bread. So there's so much that goes on, and I think it's really cool that you hit on those two things. I got to ask, what was, when your buddy first offered this, hey, would you want to run this restaurant together? What was your initial thought at the beginning? Was it like, well, I got nothing, sure, why not? I'm just doing school and hanging out, let's do this? Or was it, holy cow, like, he's being dead serious right now?
As I mentioned before, my initial thought was that was not where I saw myself, and I kind of had a very or structured and organized thought about where I wanted to go after school, and the hospitality and restaurant, food and beverage definitely was not even on my radar. But as I mentioned also before as well, as I stepped back and reflected on it, over those next couple of days, it occurred to me that this could be an opportunity and a path that was being provided for me that I didn't anticipate, and I might look back, if I didn't at least try it, it might be something that I regretted, and I think that's definitely been the case. And once I got in and was immersed in it, just that there's a sense of urgency and a pace and a sense of satisfaction that's really hard to replicate outside of the hospitality business, in my experience, that just resonated with me, and I made a connection with. And I recognized that about 6 months in, realized this was how I wanted to kind of pursue the rest of my rest of my professional career, and really wanted to focus on getting better at it, and um, kind of moving forward
Yeah.
very deliberately about that part of it.
Well, and then even like the opportunity to become the manager of the restaurant, like what was your even initial thought there? Because I know you said like I don't know much. You gotta be patient. Like I gotta learn a lot. There's got to be some other talk as well as like, well, I really still didn't think this opportunity was going to be a thing, and you
Mhm.
know, how's it going to look for my family and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, great question. I would say for anybody listening, or for anybody thinking about the hospitality sector and food and beverage in particular, now there's really a couple paths and a couple of things that need to be kind of thought through with respect to how to become a leader and a manager and and somebody who kind of moves into that role. There's a very traditional path. Probably 50% of the people that I've all worked with have kind of worked their way through various work groups and demonstrated an eagerness and enthusiasm, an interest in developing and growing. You mentioned that you worked in an Italian restaurant as a busboy, and I'll tell you, I've worked with many people that have been dishwashers, busboys, servers, bartenders that have really just not only been terrific at their jobs, but also have shown an eagerness to really want to grow and kind of taking those steps to learn more about the business
Yeah.
and always be there. And that's kind of probably a most traditional path that people think about with respect to kind of leading in a restaurant. And then there's the other path, that something similar to what I took, which is um, you're still leading people. You certainly, restaurant managers and leaders certainly need to know how everything works in the restaurant, and that's critical to being successful. However, that next step, which is leading and developing those skills that are important, that really translate not just to hospitality, but translate probably in most professional settings,
Yeah.
are equally important, if not more important. I would say I know many servers and busboys and bartenders that are amazing at their job, that I really couldn't replicate if I tried, probably for a lifetime. That said, many of them don't have the um, just the skills and the leadership potential to kind of make
Yeah.
that next step, even if they wish to. So those are really the two paths. And my background really came more from, I had kind of the background with leadership and team
Yeah.
building and I really had to focus myself on the operational side to be the most effective leader I can. Where many people that come in through a more traditional path in food and beverage might have all of those skills and understandings, but really need to fine tune and develop those leadership skills that maybe they haven't been exposed to or the opportunity to develop yet. But there's good organizations develop both of those paths,
Oh,
I
for
would
sure.
say.
And that sounds like kind of any business. You need both the specialization people that are really, really good, let's just say at bartending or
Mhm.
cooking, dishwashing, any of that kind of stuff. And for like a business, it could be I need really good salesmen. And then there's people that just have become really good leaders. And
Correct.
it's all about finding that balance and finding the right people. And I love to, it sounds like you said that you focus on the operations aspect.
Mhm.
And I'd love to kind of hear when you like you first became the manager, was it there that you started, or what was kind of like the process of learning the different things in the restaurant world? Was it, oh, I need to understand operations first, then I can understand what goes on in the kitchen, understand what's going on the floor after? What was kind of your learning process?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say that really two things. One is I recognize really early that to stay in food and beverage, that you really have to become a subject matter expert on food and beverage. And so
Yeah.
that part of it was an initial focus to me, to really kind of immerse myself in the kitchen and the culinary experiences. And that took me through just working in kitchens, becoming a kitchen manager, really working as closely as I can with chefs and culinary leaders to develop those skills, to understand really, because I don't have a culinary background, and at the end of the day, that is traditionally the foundation of food and beverages, is understanding that. And then the same thing to a lesser degree in most of my restaurants, on the beverage side, the bar side, equally important, and a bit of a different experience for the guest, but equally important. And so that was the first thing that I wanted to operationally really immerse myself in, is the different types of culinary experiences and food and beverage experiences, because those are foundational to everything else. And then the second part of it, so that's one. And then the second part, Drew, really included understanding the different styles of service and the different parts of service related to the guest experience. So there's all different kinds of styles of service. You can go into a Culver's or a McDonald's and have quick service, and
Culver's is
those,
awesome.
the guest experiences related to those are equally as meaningful as a high-end, polished, or very kind of refined service you might get with Gordon Ramsay, or you might get with
Really?
other types of service. And there's all kinds of styles of service in between. And so the second part of it, after the food and the beverage part, was really understanding the different styles of service, and how the guests react to different parts of that, and how the team reacts to different styles of service. Everything from that quick service to that really refined full service.
Yeah, and can you go like a little bit into depth about what service aspects that you're talking about, whether it's like as them bringing the food? Like, have you seen the videos where it's like a guy, he goes with like salt on the steak, and he like curls his arm up and he like makes a little show on the table itself? Like, are those different types of things we talk about service aspects that make a restaurant, is creating that experience?
Absolutely. And again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, there's the very, very refined services that you're referring to, and
Yeah.
the opportunity to make a little bit more, or in a lot of cases, a quite a bit more of a refined and very deliberate connection with the guests. So all of this, and any part of hospitality, is about making connections with guests. And in the food and beverage part of hospitality, we're making connections with our guests through our food, through our beverage, and through our service. And you can do that. You can do that at a McDonald's counter, candidly, you can, or White Castles or something very quick service. Or you can, but you get more of an opportunity to do that, to make a more solid, meaningful, lasting connection in a more refined food and beverage place. Like, for example, Gordon Ramsay steak. You mentioned you were in Vegas.
Yeah.
There's some very, very, very high-end full service restaurants in the Las Vegas area that allow the guests to really, really make more of a connection beyond just the quality of the food and the presentation of the food, but how that food and how that service gets presented. And so fundamentally, though, in food and beverage, it's about making connections with the guests through the food and through the service. And those more refined and more just kind of deliberate opportunities to make that connection come, the more time you spend. And so you mentioned things like how the food is presented and what happens tableside. And at the end of your meal, are you getting a dessert cart that's presented in front of you? And how is that beverage being presented to you? All of those are very small ways to help solidify that connection of making that connection between the brand and the guest. And you can do that again in very simple styles of service, but you get more of an opportunity to make that connection more meaningful in those more refined styles of service for sure.
I do think it's cool how you said like you can create that at both a fast food restaurant like McDonald's or Culver's, or to your most refined restaurants, and how it all kind of works the same. I do like that idea a lot because I think about Chick-fil-A, and anytime you do something at Chick-fil-A, they always say "my pleasure," or they're always very like, I haven't had a bad experience at Chick-fil-A. They're always very nice, but they always say "my pleasure," and that's the thing that is like a little thing like that that kind of creates that service. And I love to hear as well about, because there's, I'm sure, way more to the restaurant world than what's just up front in your eyes. How's it working with different vendors, like bringing in the food, exporting different things if you have to? If things go old, what do you do? Like, how's that process work? Because that's a different operation itself.
Absolutely. A few things to note about that. So there are financial implications to like the vendor relationships and the things that happen all leading up to that presentation of that steak or that dessert or that drink to the guest. And there's also the guest expectation. So there's really two components to it, all affected by those relationships. And so there's a lot of planning that goes into just that, any experience for a guest, any meal, any bar experience, anything that happens in the food and beverage. There's at least a week of things going on leading up to that guest kind of getting that meal for them. And they include just the type of planning that's necessary and understanding how many guests you're anticipating for that day or that week, working closely with your food and beverage vendors to make sure that you have the product and that it's fresh and that you don't run out of things.
Oh, so you're predicting numbers for a week.
Correct.
Like
yeah.
You might say, hey, we had 200 people this week, but with the holiday, we might have like 400.
That's right. And so understanding your business that way is critical to kind of knowing what you need to order and how to prepare that food that comes in, and working closely with your vendors to make sure that product's going to be available and getting it to you on time. And like I said,
have you ever had a mistake before? Like personally,
everybody's had mistakes before. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There will be mistakes this week probably, and what we try to do, because it's also not an exact science. I mean, there's mistakes. There's outright, oh, I forgot to order this, or the vendor ran out of this, and we weren't informed about that, or there are also things. We have tools to help anticipate how many guests we're going to have this Friday and Saturday and Sunday. But it's not an exact science. There's things that we can, we do everything we can to anticipate and kind of make that margin of error really tight, but it's not an exact science. So there's going to be opportunities to get better at making those tools better and better, but it's never an exact science. And depending upon also, Drew, the type of business, small individual restaurants have fewer tools than larger built out brands. And so it's even less of a exact science for smaller organizations, just like it is in any professional setting, because there's just fewer tools to help anticipate those needs. But if you know your business and you know your guests and you are using the tools at your disposal, you can kind of minimize that as much as you can. So,
and what would be an example? I don't know if you can describe or not, but what would be an example of a tool? And can you give another example of if you've worked with small business restaurants and large scale, what would be a tool that small businesses use compared to large to kind of predict?
There's some tools that are at every restaurant's disposal. So one common tool is a reservation tool, meaning we know through, say, there's a number of different platforms where you can go online and make a reservation or make a call, and it's put into a system. But one thing that's common to them is once that information's in there, then we know that you're planning, Drew, you and your fiance are planning on coming in on a Friday night, and we can kind of anticipate those numbers. And over time, that tool will also use through other software tools to help anticipate. We know that 80% of our guests on a Friday and Saturday are going to be making reservations. But we also know somewhere between 15 and 25% are going to be walk-ins. And so how do we plan for that? And those are tools that are available to almost any large or small restaurant owner. There's other tools that are a little bit more anticipatory and maybe or more exposure involved with larger restaurants. So most of those might include kitchen related, just food ordering and knowing kind of what our food wastes are going to be. And so if we get X amount of product in, kind of anticipating how much we're going to use of it and how much we're not going to use of it. So there's all different kinds of tools, but fundamentally it's really just knowing your business and knowing your guests. And then obviously the more time that you have to kind of develop that content, it's easier to do. So if you're a restaurant that's, even if it's just a sole proprietor that's been open 4 years, you're going to have a lot more information, a lot more data than if you've been open 4 months. And so it's really just kind of looking at what your information is and using it. And that restaurant leaders spend a lot of time trying to get that right, because there's financial implications and then there's implications to the guests too. So
yeah, well, I think about a conversation I had with Kelly Harms. She is a small business owner and she deals with a lot of exporting of oil. And she's like, I can never buy too much because then it's just sitting there and I have to pay money to store whatever it is. And I'm assuming for you guys as well, like if you have to store food or you buy excess food, it has an expiration date on it. It can go bad and it affects quality of different things. And I think just not to kind of sidetrack, but like the science of a restaurant is just so interesting to me, because it does play a lot of math skills where you have to think about, this, based on my restaurant, people will be sitting in their seats for 2 hours if it's a table of like 4 or 5 or something. And then that affects, how many numbers will we have then later on for the entire night? And how do you get people moving in and out effectively? Was that, like, just kind of going through that thought process, was that a learning curve at all for yourself kind of going into it? And like, how did you kind of figure that out along the way of balancing people moving in and out the doors and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I had to learn that. I think the understanding your business and understanding your guests kind of come with just an interest and a willingness to kind of make mistakes. You asked, have you made mistakes in that? And the answer is, of course, yes. Everybody has made mistakes, and what's really important is with respect to anticipating kind of what to expect and then planning your business around that is really understanding what the critical path is to making sure that guest experience we're exceeding that guest's expectation. And when it comes to food and beverage, the food side and the beverage side, it's really just using those tools that I mentioned to use that. And you have to understand where the critical paths are. You have to know when to order. You need to understand expiration dates, as you mentioned. There are financial implications to getting that wrong, meaning not only if you're spending too much money this week for product that you're not going to be able to use, that you might have to discard, you're losing money that way. There's also guest implications to that, where if the food isn't the freshest that's presented in front of that guest, the guest isn't going to have that same culinary experience that they would otherwise. And and that's going to resonate in a not good way with them. So again, kind of just definitely had to learn that, but understanding kind of how to discern critical paths, again, from
Yeah.
point A to point B. The guest doesn't see that, but the smart operators use the tools and the people that work with them to, and sometimes you use your vendors too. Your vendors oftentimes really understand the needs and the, kind of understand that part of it in a way that maybe you might not, especially with new products, and helping promote those new products and understanding how the guests are going to respond to those new products. Using the vendors is a really important tool as well.
Is that what a today special would be? Like, hey, here's our specials for the week. Is it that relationship with your vendor of like trying something new out? Is that why there's those specials for the week?
Sometimes there's a couple different reasons. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's really wanting to introduce a new product to the guests and promoting that new product. And maybe that's something that ultimately, if the guests respond well to that particular culinary or that drink,
Yeah.
maybe it ends up on your menu permanently. It could be a seasonal situation as well. We're kind of going into the spring here, and the menu, oftentimes parts of the menu or the daily or seasonal offerings change because of the season. You can
That's
find
crazy.
you find that in the food and the beverage side. Some of that is what's available. Some of that is just guests' interests and choices change as the weather changes a bit too. So, and then some of that is really just wanting to promote things internally that you think, you want to create. You want your bartenders and your chef and your leaders and on the culinary side to be creative when they can be, and to create opportunities to kind of make that connection with the guests. And you got to give the culinary leaders and the beverage leaders the opportunity to kind of hopefully anticipate and create new things for the guests that will really, again, help solidify that connection.
And I'm sure too, like working in a kitchen or a restaurant, it can be a lot of making some of the same things over and over again. It can be very repetitive, but when they have the opportunity to make something new, it probably excites them a little bit. And I'd love to kind of understand more of your relation, like how do you create relationships with your workers, and how
Yeah.
do you develop and evolve talent? Because I think about the restaurant industry and how fast people can move in and out of it, and how do you just keep people around, and how do you develop them?
Yeah, that's an amazing question and fundamental to really being successful. The team that you work with and that you develop and that you grow with are probably foundationally the most important thing in making connections with the guests and having a successful food and beverage business. I'd say a couple of things, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
Really, the first most important thing in a workforce in the hospitality industry is to have an enthusiasm and excitement for the team that's there. You made reference to the fact that it can be a very repetitive type of environment, whether it be in the kitchen, in the prep area, or whether it be in the front of the house. Although there's a little bit more variety among the service staff, but having an enthusiasm and having team members that understand that every single team member on that team, whether that person's a dishwasher or a prep cook or a bartender or a server or a host, all contributes to making a connection with that guest. If your dishwasher is not taking pride in their work, and they're not doing things to kind of make sure that the forks and the glassware and everything that ultimately gets in front of that guest is just right, that has as much of an impact as a server that lets you sit there for 10, 12 minutes before they come by and say hello. And so understanding that and hiring people that have that understanding, and then training people that respond to that is critical. So that's one thing, is just bringing the right people in and making sure they understand that, yes, every day is not going to be, the most exciting day in the world. It's just not going to be. That's just that nature of almost
Yeah,
any.
that's anything. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But understanding that being not being fully engaged when you come to the restaurant really affects the guest experience and ultimately affects the restaurant's outcomes. And the second thing is you asked about, like, how do you keep that enthusiasm and make that connection with your team. And in my experience in the hospitality, if you have the right team, making a connection with your team through building trust with them and being there with them, not only just physically, but emotionally and intellectually, is the second leg, the second most just important thing in helping lead really any. I would challenge any professional area to have leaders that don't have the trust of their team. In the long run, that's super important. And how you do that in food and beverage and the hospitality is to be there with them, to teach everybody what that looks like and to be side by side. Certainly leaders have to lead, and what that looks a little different than what a server or host or a prep cook's going to do on a daily basis. But you have to be there to kind of build trust and to develop that relationship. So, and then the third part is just having accountability. There are certain outcomes that have to happen no matter what. And while we want to work together and we want to be enthusiastic and we should trust each other, we also have to hold each other accountable to those outcomes, whether it be the culinary outcomes, how the food looks, how the food tastes, how quickly the food gets out there, or the service outcomes, how attentive we are. Are we using the language of hospitality, like my pleasure, like you mentioned, that you could use anywhere, and how we're responding from a service standpoint. And so holding each other accountable is super important to the guest outcomes and that the restaurant's outcomes. And as leaders, we have to live that every single day we're in the restaurant. And the team sees that. They respond to that ultimately, in my experience anyway.
I think one of the best things that you can do just as a leader or just as a person itself is to take accountability. It may not even be your fault, but you're like, hey, guys, this one's on me. Like, because everything's a reflection on yourself in a way, especially as the manager. Whatever goes wrong reflects on you. And so if you have that ability to take accountability, regardless of your fault or not, I think that goes a long way with building that trust aspect. And I just
that
love
translates everywhere. I mean, that's not just. I agree with you 100%.
And I'd love to kind of hear, how do you kind of move on the floor when it's like a Friday, Saturday night? Like, how do you move around? Because if something's going slow, like, where do you go? Are you in the kitchen, or is it like out on the floor, whether it's like helping wait? Like, what can managers do, and for people that are listening, to help their team out?
Yeah, great question. There's a few different answers to that. Some of that depends on the style of service. Some of that depends on the needs of the restaurant and the guests at the time. But generally, as long as everything's that's been planned is organized and we're staffed right and we've anticipated our guests and everything else is pretty predictable. Most of what my experience and what I expect out of my managers, and then also I think in most concepts are like this, is that the leaders should be present for their team and their guests. And what that means is just being available for what the needs of our team are and what the needs of our guests are. I like to say that in full service restaurants, it's really our team, our work group team members that mostly take care of the needs of our guests, our servers, our bus boys and bus girls, and our bartenders and our hosts. And then on the culinary side, it's the line cooks and the dishwashers and the prep cooks. They're primarily taking care of the needs of the guests in that way. What we should do as leaders is be present for them first and foremost. Because if we take care of our team, not only on a daily basis, but on an ongoing basis, they're going to they're going to be in a better position to take care of the needs of our guests.
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing. And that could look a little different on every day. It could look different. It's going to look different on a Tuesday than it does on a Saturday night. But being present, and the only way to know those things is to, really be active and to be in motion and to kind of know what your business should be looking like in the moment and responding to the needs. Maybe we have to move somebody from this spot to that spot. Maybe we have to, maybe we have to be in the back supporting the prep cooks and in order to kind of get prepped up for that Saturday night that's happening. So it looks differently a little bit every day, but if we can know what the needs of our team are, then we're going to be able to respond to what the needs of the guests are. And you can only do that by being present. And on a Saturday night, that looks like I like to be on the floor and near the kitchen. So I'm always moving. I'm trying to make connections with our guests and our team, trying to also, though, keep an eye on how operationally we're doing. How long is the food taking to come out? How's the food look when it hits the table? How are we responding to the needs of the guests? Is the server, our servers, able to anticipate the needs of the guests, or are they bogged down in maybe helping another guest? And can we support them in that way? So you really got to be active to do that. And sometimes it's more focused on the culinary side. Sometimes it's more focused on the service side. And ideally, though, you want to be kind of measuring and being there for both teams so that you can just be there to support their needs.
For sure. And not to totally sidetrack, and I got probably two more loaded questions, I would say. And the first one is, why deal with all the stress? The restaurant business can be very stressful. There's a lot of moving parts. Why deal with it?
Great question, because it is stressful and it's difficult to get right. I have two answers for that. One is about the restaurant itself and the team. So there, in my experience, and I've coached, I've been in other industries in the business world. I've had an opportunity to really kind of learn from others and other industries and businesses. One thing I've learned in my experience about hospitality is that there is an energy and an enthusiasm that come with the hospitality business and a team, the amount of teamwork necessary to get it right, that there's really a bond that's created between the people working in that endeavor. So no matter what the hospitality business is, there is a commitment to the team and to having to work together that builds a bond that is hard to do in engineering or law or name your whatever. It's just you have to bond and work closely, incredibly closely with your team in order to get it right. And so that develops a bond that in my experience, it's you don't get anywhere else. That in my experience. So that's one answer. Why the first answer to why do it is because you really create relationships with your team and an energy that I haven't experienced too much other than in coaching and kind of that experience. And then the second answer is in hospitality. This is more particular to hospitality, Drew. When you get it right for the guest, whether it be at Disney World or at a high-end restaurant, or whether it be more of an entertainment venue like Pinstripes or just an entertainment venue in hospitality. When you get that right, guests remember that, and they have wonderful experiences, and those experiences never leave them. And certainly there is a benefit to your business in that way, but it also just feels good. And when guests come in and they're celebrating perhaps a banquet, or they might be celebrating a first communion or an engagement party or a wedding or it might just be a date on a Saturday night for a couple that hasn't gone out in a while because they got young kids. And you get that right, and guests express that to you, there's almost no better feeling. And so that's the second answer, is that in hospitality, you, in my experience, you put up with and endure and learn from so many challenges. But when you get it right, it feels really good, because at least in my experience, most of the best memories I have with my family, um, that resonate, that when I think about, are about things that are one-offs. It's certainly the dinner at home is important every single night, and getting that right are memories that build a family and a relationships and all of that. But when you have wonderful experiences outside that are one-offs, like I just mentioned, and you get that right, guests never forget that, and
That's awesome.
that's meaningful. So those are the two answers. You have to build a team and have a connection in order to get it right. So that's one answer. And then the other answer is, when you get it right for the guests, that's an amazing experience the guests never forget. And that's hard to replicate in a lot of other businesses.
That's awesome. And I guess it's kind of like a part two question
Mhm.
is, because the restaurant industry is so focused, or like the busiest times are those Friday, Saturday nights. What did How did you feel when you had to sacrifice, maybe it was spending time with your family or kids, to be at the restaurant versus, let's just say, your kid's hockey game or playing basketball or anything like that?
That's an extremely difficult challenge, and everybody makes their own individual choices about that. Um, in my personal experience, because I was a little later getting into the hospitality business, my two sons were already in high school before I really kind of immersed myself in the hospitality business. But I know many, 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 many people that have to really make a trade off in all kinds of ways. I'd start with one thing. Everybody asks some version of that question, Drew, because it's meaningful. I like to say that hospitality and restaurant leaders work about the same amount of hours as anybody that works a lot and that is successful, right? I mean, successful people in government, in law, in anything, they're working a lot. What's different and unique about the hospitality business and food and beverage in particular is most of your guests are there at night and on the weekends and the holidays.
Mhm.
And that's when you have to be there in order to be successful and to make connections with them. And so I'd like to say we work the same amount of hours as anybody that's trying to get it right and be successful. It's just those hours are different, kind of flipped on its head. And
Yeah.
so those are choices you have to make. It's a wonderful business. It's a tremendous financial opportunities and some of those other relationship opportunities that many people just find they lose when they leave. I know many people that leave the restaurant hospitality business, and they find other endeavors that are very, very satisfying. But many of them come back or express to me in other ways that they just miss that energy. And so it's very difficult. Again, it's those are personal choices, and I would say most of the time you work hard to get it right for your guests and your team, so that that's worth the trade off. So.
Yeah, and I'll mention that I mentioned this a lot on past episodes. Is, I know my dad wasn't in the food and beverage industry, but I know the sacrifices he made in terms of getting ahead of the game when he was first starting as a physical therapist. Like, he'd be open to close most nights, and that would be getting back at like 8, 9 p.m. throughout the entire week. And so we wouldn't really see him often, but it allowed him to get ahead, and you kind of make the most of the times that he was around. And like, it's the quality of time over necessarily the quantity. And I gotta ask, like, one last question here is, dream spot to work at if you were the general manager anywhere, dream spot to work at? You did mention Disney World a few times. It's one of my favorite places. Would you go there or would you go somewhere else?
Good question. Very good question. I would say I've been very fortunate. I'm in the food and beverage part of hospitality. I would have liked to, if I got started in my journey, or my journey went a little differently. I do find that the experiences in the hotel and resort hospitality sector create an opportunity to even make a more in-depth connection with guests. So, like I mentioned, Culver's or Chick-fil-A, and McDonald's, you can make a connection with guests that way. And I contrasted it with higher end opportunities to make even a more meaningful connection with guests. But again, even in the most meaningful food and beverage, it's only a couple hours. Where if you spend a week in, we're going to talk about Disney and that brand and how meaningful it is. When you spend a week, but not just there, any resort, you're not only just there for a couple hours, you're there for the whole week. And so
Yeah.
you even have a more meaningful opportunity to make a connection with the guest. So I would say a dream general manager job, which would be being a general manager of a resort that just creates meaningful, those memorable experiences for a couple days in a row or a week in a row, as
Oh, for
opposed to a
sure.
couple hours in a row. So that's a great question, and my journey didn't take me there, and I'm very happy with how my journey has kind of worked out for me and my family. But that would be something that would be a dream. Some very well established resort that would be cool, and for the reasons I mentioned, and then the brand, the Disney brand. We talked about that. I, you
Probably
know
get some
this, I
cool
think.
discounts.
Yeah, we've been to Disney World a few times, and that brand is has they've earned that reputation and that brand, and I haven't been disappointed, or very very few times disappointed at that when experiencing the Disney brand. There's other brands that create the same type of, or have that same type of reputation and that well-earned reputation. But absolutely, my wife and myself are very loyal to that brand, and in fact, we're going with um, some family members there in about 6 weeks or so. So
Nice.
looking forward to that again. But it's not, although that Disney brand's very unique. It's the meaning that comes behind that brand, that connection that they make every single time a guest interacts with them, that carries that through, and that means
Well, and for
something.
you to
Yeah,
be part of
that's
the
what I
industry, that says a lot because you're probably analyzing things at a different rate than someone with just a naked eye to all of it.
Sometimes it's hard to step away from that. I try to do that though. Yeah.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, thank you, Dennis. I can't thank you enough though for being on the show today. It does mean a lot.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I hope some of this is meaningful, and somebody, anybody that's interested in the hospitality sector has learned a little bit more about it than they knew before. And it's a wonderful industry, I'm very happy to be a part of it, and I've really enjoyed spending time with you, Drew.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey everyone, want to take a quick second and say thank you to whoever listened to the episode today. I really do appreciate it and it means a lot. If you did like the episode, make sure to give it a like or 5-star rating depending on what platform you are listening to. And if you really want to support the show, check out our website or Patreon link below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next episode.